Have you ever had one of those moments, maybe late at night, where you just look back at your day and realize you barely remember living it? Look, let's just dive straight into this explainer, because today we are confronting a genuinely terrifying possibility. It's a concept that hits incredibly close to home for anyone who has ever felt totally frustrated by their own lack of discipline. We're looking at what I call the autopilot illusion, and the core idea here is jarring. What if most of your life is happening completely without you? And I really don't mean that metaphorically, I mean it literally. I want you to really let this question sink in for a second. Think about the person who wakes up absolutely exhausted, who mindlessly scrolls for hours on the couch, who intensely procrastinates on the exact dreams they genuinely care about. What if that person isn't actually consciously choosing any of it? It's a deeply disturbing reality, honestly. Most of us walk around thinking we are the active authors of our lives, making decisions throughout our day. But in reality, we're just running automated scripts. And the scariest thing about a psychological script is that the person running it almost always believes it's freedom. Think about it. Every morning begins the exact same way. Your alarm rings, and your hand is already reaching for the phone before your eyes have even fully adjusted to the light. Notifications, messages, reels, quick dopamine hits. You didn't deliberately decide to do that. You didn't weigh the pros and cons. You just did it. Then it's the exact same coffee, the same route to work, the same emotional coping mechanisms when you get stressed. Slowly, quietly, these tiny unconscious actions, repeated thousands of times, harden into an identity you never intentionally chose. To really grasp how deep this programming goes, we need to move to Section 1, Unconscious Pattern Recognition. There is this fascinating, almost unbelievable story about a paramedic. She's at a completely normal family gathering. The food is cooking, people are laughing, everything is fine. And then she casually glances across the room at her father-in-law. Just one glance. Instantly, she feels this sudden, inexplicable, sinking sense of dread. She walks up to him and says, "I don't like the way you look," and literally forces him to go to the hospital right then and there. He felt totally fine, but hours later, doctors discovered a massive arterial blockage. He was moments away from a fatal heart attack. How did she know? Her brain had silently memorized invisible patterns over years of working in medicine, tiny microscopic shifts in skin tone and facial tension, and it saved his life, even though her conscious, logical mind couldn't explain exactly why in that moment. And this kind of thing happens everywhere. Military analysts unconsciously identifying enemy missiles from identical little green radar blips. Museum experts instantly feeling in their gut that a painting is a fake. Radiologists spotting anomalies. Hairdressers knowing a client is pregnant before they even say a word. The human brain is just this incredible sponge, constantly, silently learning patterns. But here is the highly unsettling realization. If our nervous systems can unconsciously learn life-saving patterns, they can also unconsciously learn highly destructive ones. Which brings us to Section 2, the modern dopamine trap. Because look, nobody wakes up on a random Tuesday and consciously decides, "I think I want to waste my life today." The collapse of a life happens so quietly. It happens one automatic, invisible behavior at a time, entirely through a continuous psychological loop. Cue, behavior, reward. You check your phone every single time a tiny bit of discomfort appears. You procrastinate every time fear appears. You seek out cheap stimulation every time silence appears in the room. You aren't consciously choosing to fail. Your brain has just learned this exact, highly reliable loop to self-soothe your anxiety. Cue, behavior, reward, again, again, again. The loop accelerates, faster and faster, until your reactions become faster than your own self-awareness. And remember, you are fighting a radically unfair uphill battle here. Billion-dollar industries with thousands of engineers are aggressively designing your attention, your impulses, and your emotional triggers. Every time you fall into an infinite scroll, that is reinforcement learning. You are literally training your own nervous system to avoid boredom and reality at all costs. I want to pause here for a second because this is heavy. The famous psychologist Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Let that completely sink in. When a habit becomes automatic, it becomes invisible to you. And when it becomes invisible, it just disappears into your identity. We start mistaking our deep conditioning for our actual personality. We say things to ourselves like, "Well, I'm just lazy," or "I'm just an anxious person." No. Most of the time, you are simply automated. And this leads us to Section 3, the identity prison, and the hidden danger of the habits we don't realize we have. To illustrate just how absurd and powerful this automation really is, consider the story of a retail worker.
Her daily routine at the register was to take used empty gift cards from customers and securely cut them up with scissors, day after day. Swipe, cut, discard. Swipe, cut, discard. Until one day, a customer mistakenly handed over an actual active credit card. The employee went completely on autopilot. She swiped it, picked up the scissors, and cut the customer's real physical credit card right in half while staring blankly into space. It's a funny story, it's got a bit of dark humor to it, but it perfectly mirrors the tragedy of our own lives. We are running outdated scripts and obeying habits built years ago, completely oblivious to the fact that our environment has changed and we are holding a totally different set of cards. There is a massive existential danger here. There is a profound psychological difference between performing a behavior and becoming a behavior. When I avoid conflict slowly turns into I am not confrontational, or I get distracted easily turns into I just have a bad attention span. Your identity is suddenly locked in a prison. And because human beings will do anything to defend their identities, trying to change that bad habit suddenly feels like an attack on who you fundamentally are. So, how do we break out of this? Section 4. Waking up through awareness. There is this bizarre but absolutely brilliant psychological intervention used by train conductors over in Japan to combat the drifting automated mind. It's a safety system called pointing and calling. For every single signal light, every speed check, the conductors actually physically point at the object and verbally announce its status out loud. Signal green, speed confirmed. It honestly looks a bit ridiculous, but it massively reduces human errors. Why? Because keeping actions purely mental invites autopilot. Physically pointing your finger and speaking violently forces your awareness back online. It entirely interrupts the background programming. And this is the ultimate truth of this entire explainer. Awareness interrupts programming. People think changing their life requires massive cinematic motivation and 5 a.m. ice baths. It really doesn't. Simply noticing your hand reaching for your phone before you start working, just catching the ghost in the machine in the act, is the real doorway to transformation. Because once a behavior becomes visible to you, it instantly becomes interruptible. Let me walk you through an exercise. It's called the habit scorecard. You sit down and you write down the raw, ugly, unidealized reality of your day. Waking up tired, checking the phone in bed, avoiding the hard work, scrolling for an hour, the late-night dopamine loops, the whole shebang. And then you place those comfortable little habits right next to one brutal, identity-challenging question. Does this cast a vote for my future identity? Asking this question forces a sudden, painful shift in perspective. These aren't just random, harmless little habits anymore. They are a visible, mathematical trajectory. And this brings us face to face with a genuinely agonizing feeling, the fear of wasted potential. The unbearable, sickening frustration of watching yourself waste hours of your life that you swore to yourself you wouldn't waste. Recognizing that specific pain brings us to our final concept, destiny by design, and how we actually take control back. If you are emotionally exhausted from constantly restarting, from feeling that intense lack of discipline, you need to realize something absolutely crucial. The core issue isn't a lack of discipline. It's a total lack of consciousness. You cannot defeat a pattern you cannot detect. Just like those Japanese train conductors, there is a hidden, almost ancient power in simply speaking your actions aloud to weaken the autopilot. When you literally name the behavior out loud, you snap yourself back into the room of your own life.
Imagine actually sitting alone and saying out loud, I'm pretending to be busy right now because I'm absolutely terrified to fail. Or, I'm scrolling on my phone right now because I feel incredibly lonely. The philosophical tragedy of modern life is that instead of sitting still in a quiet room long enough to actually see these patterns, we just medicate the symptoms with more noise, more endless scrolling, and more cheap dopamine.
Real change isn't a montage. Real change is just waking up. You aren't trying to magically become some hyper-productive robot or a completely different human being. You are simply trying to wake up from an inherited automatic existence so you can catch your emotional triggers before they consume you. You are creating a microsecond of separation, and separation creates choice. This is the quiet collapse of human consciousness. Our lives are not destroyed by one giant, catastrophic movie villain decision. They are shaped entirely by thousands of tiny, completely invisible, unconscious moments. Those moments become quiet daily routines. Those routines slowly harden into a personality. That personality becomes a lifestyle, and eventually, that lifestyle becomes your destiny.
So you have a binary choice here, destiny by design versus destiny by default. Your brain is a machine. It is always learning, it is always adapting, it is always becoming something. The ultimate choice is whether you are going to be the architect intentionally shaping it, or if you are going to sit back and let the modern world shape it for you. I want to end this explainer by leaving you with a provocative thought, a question to just let hang in the air. Stop asking yourself what your lofty 10-year goals are. Look closely at your actual boring daily loops and ask yourself, what are your unconscious habits preparing you to become? Think about that today. Turn the lights on in the dark room of your own mind. Take notice of your autopilot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next explainer.